Hey there, thanks for joining me for a story today. So glad to be able to spend a few minutes with you. Hope you've taken some deep breaths today. You've had some sense of peace in your heart, and that the beauty of the day that surrounds you will begin to fill you as well. Thanks for joining me. Really great to spend a few moments with you. So this story comes out of the life of Elisha, the prophet that followed Elijah. And he has some amazing stories in the beginning of 2 Kings, some of the great miracle stories in the Old Testament. So this is one of those, and just a small story. And the only thing it might be helpful to know before I tell the story is Elisha had a group of guys that followed him and were training with him, and they were called the sons of the prophets. And that's where our story will begin. And before we start, let's just say a prayer. God, I thank you for the beauty and the pleasure that we have of being alive. I thank you for this day. I thank you for the gift of this body each of us get to live in, the body that's perfectly formed and functions so well. Thank you so much for the beauty of creation that surrounds us. Thank you so much for the privilege of being alive. And for a few minutes in your word, we give you thanks. It's such a joy just to hang out together just for a few minutes. In your name, amen. So here's where the story begins. The sons of the prophet came to Elisha and said, "The place where we're meeting is too small. Therefore, let each of us go to the Jordan, each man cut down a beam, and let us build there a dwelling place that is larger for us." Elijah says, "Go." And then one of them came back to Elisha and said, "Won't you come with us?" And Elisha said, "I will come." And he went. As they were cutting down trees by the Jordan, one man's axe head flew off into the water. The man cried out to Elisha and said, "Master, it was borrowed." Elisha asked him where it had fallen, and the man showed him. The man of God, it says, asked him where it had fallen, and the man showed him. Then the man of God took a stick and threw it in the water where the axe head had fallen and made the iron float. Then Elisha said to the man, "Reach out and grab it." And he reached out and he grabbed it. That's the end of that story. So at the end of the story, the sons of the prophets come to Elisha and said, "The place we're dwelling is too small. Therefore, let each of us go down to the Jordan, cut a beam, and make a larger dwelling place for us." It sounds like that they had discovered that there was a problem they had with where they were living, right? It was too small. How else might they have solved that? Like, other than going to him, what else might they have done? Think about that. I mean, they could have just complained. I know when you have groups of people that have problems, do sometimes people just complain about the problem? They could have gone to him and asked him for solutions. So do you learn anything about this group of guys and what they thought of their leader? That they came to him with a problem and a solution. "The place we're dwelling is too small, therefore let each of us go to the Jordan, cut a beam for himself, and we'll build a larger place there." What do we learn about them in the relationship to Elisha? And Elisha, what kind of a leader is he that when his people that come to him with an idea and a solution, or a problem and a solution, he just says, "Go for it"? Do you learn anything about the character of Elisha by his response? How else might he have responded? Had he responded with saying, "Oh no, I don't think it's a very good idea. You could do this, this, and this instead"? What then will we think of him? But what he said was, "Go." Like, do it. And then, what do we learn about what they thought of him, that one of them comes back to Elisha and says, "Won't you come with us?" And he goes, "I will come." So there's some really interesting dynamics in this story right there, right? Between a group of people that are following an individual, a leader, and the relationship they share. And then you get down the river, and one man's axe head falls into the water, right? And what does Elisha do? And he's called something different there, right? Remember what he's called? He's called the man of God. And what does he do? He takes a stick. Now, do sticks sink or do they float? Oh, they float. So he takes something that does float and throws it in the water where the iron had fallen and makes the iron float. Clearly an unusual event, right? Clearly a miracle. Things don't happen that way. You can't make iron float with a stick. So that's some of our logic, right? And yet, we look at this man of God and what he did, and we could ask, what do we learn about him that that's what he decided to do? Or we could wonder, is there anything in this that we might learn from about how God might work in circumstances that feel overwhelming to us? So just for a second, at the beginning of the story, we have a group of guys that have a problem and a solution. They come to their leader and they tell him about it. Today, do we see teams encountering problems, coming up with solutions, and coming to their leader and the leader accepting what they said and just telling him, go, like a leader that's really open-handed in his or her leadership so that the teams are free to accomplish the things that are out there? I bet you know some people and some teams like that. And yet, you know the flip. Have you experienced the flip where the employee or the person that works for the leader has an idea or has a problem and a solution, but is rejected by the leader because the leader wants to micromanage? Isn't it interesting in this story what we see about leadership? But then look at the end of this story. The man of God takes something ordinary and something that can float and causes something extraordinary to happen in that something that cannot float does. Today, do we see God take that which looks ordinary, like ordinary to the point of being ignored, and use it to do extraordinary things? Have you ever seen that happen? Where God takes something ordinary, in fact, something that seems to be like worthless, and does something extraordinary with it. I hope you see that kind of thing today, because we have a God that is extraordinarily able to do the extraordinary with the ordinary. And guys, I don't know about you, but every day, each of us have a little bit of ordinary in us. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope you have a time of experiencing the presence and the goodness of God. Hey, thanks for tuning in.